Drew here, and I feel like the second episode of season 2 of C, it is another episode where I wonder how the rest of the season is going to keep up with this level of pacing. I feel that things have moved a lot quicker this season than they did in previous seasons. It comes with some problems. There was some plot lines this episode that I actually felt moved a little too quick. But on the whole, I think this is an optimistic sign for the rest of the season. But I have a feeling they're not going to be able to match this level of action and development. I think the most exciting thing this episode was the confrontation between Ito and Baba. I find it kind of hilarious that we're supposed to believe that Ito, played by Dave Bautista, is the younger brother of Jason Momoa's Baba Voss. They are 52 and 42 in real life, so 10 years older, but playing the younger brother, I find that kind of hysterical. But this casting, intuitively, it makes a degree of sense because I feel that despite his external toughness, I do feel that there is a level of vulnerability that you can see in certain moments of Dave Bautista's performance where you could imagine him being the younger brother, even if, you can look at the actors and go, no, 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 no. But there was a moment in this episode, I feel that the character of Ito Voss, at this particular point in the series, he's become a little bit over the top evil and in such a way that he kind of lacks humanity. And I feel that they need to do some work to humanize him more. Now, this episode, they did establish that his brother Baba Voss beat him as a child, probably at their father's behest, and that his anger towards his brother is in a large part due to this, that he feels that he was abused and abandoned by his brother, so he wants to make his brother suffer the way that he suffered. And that's a understandable and human reaction, but it's about the only one that we get this episode. Otherwise, he's basically torturing Baba constantly.
Because I will keep you here and whip you every night for every night you with me.
Threatening to have Haniwa
spend the rest of her life in my dungeons, a brood mare, mothering sighted children for my army.
So basically, on the whole, there's not a whole lot to sympathize with as far as Ito Voss is concerned. And I think that they need to do some work with that, because at the moment he kind of feels like a cartoonishly evil character. Now, there are, some hints of more depth to him, that, he's the only one in Travantes, the only Travantian leader who seems to recognize that the sighted are the future, and that if they ignore this, then their enemies won't, and they're going to be at a disadvantage in coming warfare. And he actually, it's revealed this episode, has secretly been creating, sighted individuals and integrating them into his army against the will of the rulers of this kingdom, because if he was found out, I'm not sure exactly how that would go down. It wouldn't go down well for the sighted characters at the very least. But this confrontation between Baba and Ito, it wasn't really, they're going to have probably some kind of a duel fight later in the season. This one was more just the severely weakened Baba getting the crap kicked out of him. But later in the season, I imagine it's going to be more of a duel. But this confrontation, there was a really, really great moment in it. It wasn't much of a fight, but I really liked the moment when Baba pleaded for Ito.
Please, let my death be the end of it. Let me leave this place.
And there was this moment where Dave Bautista kind of slowly sank to the ground and made a kind of a guttural noise. And I felt that this was brilliant acting on Dave Bautista's part, because it's not clear exactly what's going on in his head, if there is any weakening of his resolve in terms of what he's going to do to Baba Voss. I don't feel like the script is doing a lot to humanize the character, but I do feel that Dave Bautista in that moment added a lot of layers to this character. Otherwise, this episode, it wasn't as good from an action standpoint, I felt like the action scenes this episode were fine, but they felt a little bit more perfunctory than last week. Last week, I felt like the choreography and the way that they were handled, the action scenes, felt a lot more intentional and memorable. This week, I feel like it felt a little bit more, we have to have an action scene so that the characters can escape. But I did like the team up this week. The return of Tamakti Jun. This is, something that I was expecting because Christian Camargo, his name was in the opening credits last week, so I expected him to appear at some point this season. Glad they didn't leave it off too long. I think that this team up with him and with Ren, who, more on her in a bit, is helping Baba Voss to rescue his daughter and putting herself in great jeopardy to do so. I felt like this was a great team up, and the way that Haniwa got in on the action with her bow. All of this to me made this sequence really pretty interesting and exciting, even though I felt like from an execution standpoint, the action was just not quite as memorable as last week. But glad to have Tamakti Jun back, and I'm interested to see his dynamic play out with Baba Voss and Haniwa as they go to confront the characters that are in Pensa. Now, I feel that it's exciting to have him back. It'll be interesting to see how they handle his past actions. I feel like they shouldn't be so quick to redeem this character because Tamakti Jun has done some wicked, wicked things. But I'm glad the character is still around. He was one of the more nuanced characters in the show and intimidating, and I think a lot of that comes down to Christian Camargo's performance. And I felt a major sense of disappointment when I thought that they had killed him off last season, so I'm glad to see him back. Otherwise, this episode, Queen Kane is starting to be quite annoying. I was reading people's online reactions to the character and how they struggled to listen to her line delivery. In this episode, I felt like she had definitely some moments where she was just painful to listen to.
Defenses, we have been charged by God to defeat the Gervantians. We must prepare to attack, not defend. Sibith. Who?
And what I think is more frustrating is that she's just insane. Like, everything she does is getting her dug in deeper and deeper, and she's not thinking through anything. And when Magra tries to talk her out of some of her worst impulses, all she does is say, "I'm the queen, God, you can't disagree with me." And I just am starting to have it up to here with the character. I do think that she is intriguing in some ways, but I feel that the campiness of the performance is starting to wear on me. And the fact that the character kind of lacks the ability to surprise at this point. But speaking of surprises, the ending of this episode, what went down after she found out that she had a miscarriage and was stabbing her nurse repeatedly, that was brutal enough.
You killed her.
But the moment when she killed Boots,
You poor, stupid boy.
this moment to me, this is just how insane she is, that there's absolutely no reason to kill him. Like, he has there's no benefit to her in ending his life. Now she's basically guaranteed that she can't be pregnant with a sighted child. And unless she has some kind of a play that we're not seeing, I don't see how doing this made any sense. And I was quite surprised because I felt like they were going to do more with the character of Boots. I felt like there was potential for him to be an interesting wild card character. But alas, he is gone from the playing field, seemingly for good. Otherwise, this episode, we see Queen Kane trying to set Magra up with a marriage to Lord Harlan. And obviously, Magra is quite opposed to this. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes down. I'd like to see Magra become more of an active player. This episode kind of has this repetitive theme from last week where she gives Queen Kane good advice, gets ignored, sees that they're in more and more danger because of Queen Kane's actions, but isn't really able to do anything to mitigate that. I'd like to see her be a more active player. The ultimate irony this episode, we discover that Gerald Morel, this person who has been really, really famous, a myth even for having sight, has been blinded after his fight with Baba Voss last season. And that's, kind of the ultimate irony for him, is that everyone is blind in this world, but now, his blindness is of a different sort. Having had sight, he doesn't have the advantages that these other individuals who are born blind have. And his rejection of the possibility that he can be blind, his lack of ability to cope with this, is pretty interesting. I feel like there's potential for him to become a really, really fascinating villain if the show goes on for more seasons. Although they could just kill him off unexpectedly. You never know with this show. Otherwise, I mentioned that the pacing was a good sign for the show, that they're keeping things moving at a steady clip. But I do feel that there was a consequence to that, and that's that the development of the character of Lieutenant Wren, played by Eden Epstein. I feel like this character, Eden Epstein's performance, does a lot to sell it. I really did enjoy watching her and Haniwa explore this city that they're in, the city of Cervantes. I felt like that's added a needed component to the show, because if it's all just dark, brooding action, then what are the characters fighting for? If there's nothing good in this world, why do we care if the characters live or die? But having this moment between Haniwa and Wren as they explore the city, I also just like the world building, because this series, in season 1, I think they were oftentimes outdoors, and it was easy to lose sight of the fact that this is the future and not some fantasy landscape. But this episode, just seeing all the fantasy locales laid over like the world that we live in today, and seeing like this hotel and all these other locations that are in a state of disrepair, I thought that was really good world building and really interesting. But I felt that this whole sequence felt rushed. I really had trouble buying, even though there was this connection that they had because they're both sighted characters. I feel, like it was pretty obvious to me that this was a romantic connection, or that the writers wanted it to be a romantic connection early on. And kudos to the actors, Nesta Cooper and Eden Epstein. Again, I feel like their acting did a lot to sell this relationship. But to me, it really didn't seem plausible that in the course of one episode, the person who is her captor could go from being her captor to falling in love with her to risking her life to save her. How does she think she's going to explain the escape of Baba Voss and Tamakti Jun? I feel that the character probably, even if she did have sympathy for Haniwa, I very, very much doubt that she would go to these lengths for someone she had just met, even if there was a romantic connection there. And I feel that the romantic connection itself felt kind of rushed, given that they just met last episode and halfway through the episode they're already kissing. I feel that this is a problem with the pacing, is because it's moving so fast, they don't have time to establish new relationships, and in some instances to establish the humanity of characters like Ido Voss. So on the whole, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was strong. A lot happened. It had shocking moments such as the death of Boots, the return of characters like Tamakti Jun, and on the whole, I'm really still very interested to see where this season goes. I imagine things are going to slow down in episodes 3 and 4, but maybe they can maintain this pace. I don't know. But those are just my thoughts for what they're worth. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of C and other shows on this channel, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching.